Please rise to salute the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The clerk will call a roll.
Councilor Vido. Councilor Avellaneda.
Present.
Councilor Recupero. Councilor Garcia.
Present.
Councilor Vega Maldonado.
Here.
Councilor Robinson.
Here.
Councilor Rodriguez.
Here.
Councilor Taylor.
Here.
Councilor Lopez.
Here.
Councilor Brown.
Here.
And Councilor Zabit.
Present.
10 members present.
Prior to our next part of the meeting, which is memoriams and celebratory resolutions, I would kindly ask my colleagues to please stand to have a moment of silence in recognition of 9/11. I want us all to not only remember those who were killed on that day in New York City, Washington, D.C., and on the field in Shanksville, Pennsylvania, but also those first responders who died later from illnesses from working at the World Trade Center site, and also those who were serving in Afghanistan as a result of that response to the terrorist attack. Thank you. We'll now move on to celebratory resolution introduced by Councilor Robinson in regarding to Latimer Lewis's 173rd birthday. Whereas the Chelsea Lewis H. Latimer Society Museum was formed by Ron and Leo Robinson to raise public awareness and the accomplishments of Lewis Latimer, to preserve his legacy and transcend his wisdom and philosophies to modern-day Chelsea and beyond. And in recognition of the former Chelsea-born resident, on September 4th, 1848, son of an escaped slave's great 19th century inventor, electrical engineer, and historical figure. And whereas in 1882, Latimer invented a device for efficiently manufacturing the carbon filaments used in electric lamps, and shared a patent for the maximum electric lamp. And whereas Latimer patented a threaded wooden socket for light bulbs and supervised the installation of electrical streetlights in New York City, Philadelphia, Montreal, and London. And whereas in 1884, Latimer became an engineer at the Edison Electric Light Company, where he had the distinction of being the only African-American member of the Edison Pioneers. And whereas Latimer wrote Incandescent Electrical Lighting in 1890, the first engineering handbook on lighting systems. And whereas Lewis Latimer was inducted in 2006 to the Inventors Hall of Fame for producing a method of producing a more durable carbon filament, making incandescent lighting practical and affordable for consumers. And whereas the Latimer Society will be celebrating his 173rd birthday with events all throughout the month of September for all ages. And whereas Lewis Latimer, Thomas Edison, and the light bulb exhibit is at the Broadway Gallery, located at 456 Broadway. Whereas the Lewis Latimer Art and Science installation is located in Port Park at 99 Marginal Street, beginning on September 10th, 2021. Therefore, let it be resolved that on the behalf of the residents of the City of Chelsea, the Chelsea City Council wish to go on record to congratulate the Lewis H. Latimer Society on their success and many years of service, and may you have many more years of presenting Lewis H. Latimer to the community and beyond. Introduced by City Councilor Leo Robinson. Councilor Robinson?
I adopt this unanimously under suspension if there are no objections.
Seeing none?
Just want to illustrate the fact that Lewis Latimer and Thomas Edison had a connection here in Chelsea. For those of you who know, the corner of Chestnut and Beacon Street was a building that used to provide electricity to the city of Chelsea. He also had a office at 276 Broadway in Chelsea. And right now at the gallery is the Lewis Latimer and Thomas Edison exhibit around the light bulb about the filament. And also at Port Park is the Latimer installation in regards to art and science. So I would encourage you to go by and take a look at the exhibits. It's very educational and very historical for the city of Chelsea. Thank you.
Thank you. Would you like to, Councilor Brown?
Thank you. I want to thank the council for bringing the resolution to recognize the 173rd anniversary. As we know, the resolution states that Louis Lattimore was born here in the city of Chelsea in 1848. He was a black inventor who did a lot of early work in his early life here in the city of Chelsea. He was very helpful in the telephone and also the light bulbs, where we have the lights here today. So every time you get a chance to recognize the work of such a genius of a person that made a remarkable accomplishment to our American history, it's worthy to recognize. So I want to thank the council again for recognizing that. Thank you, Mr. President.
At this time, we'll take a brief recess so that Councilor Robinson can present and take a picture with the members of the Latimer Lewis Society.
Want me to get the next
I'll
one?
get it, I'll get it.
Okay.
Oh, I know, I'm still looking. I'll read the next one. Next item on the agenda is a celebratory resolution introduced by Councilor Avellaneda regarding, and all members of the City Council, regarding Latino Heritage Month. Whereas during National Latino Heritage Month from September 15th to October 15th, the Chelsea City Council recognizes the contributions made and the important presence of Latino Americans in Chelsea, Massachusetts, and to the United States as a whole, and celebrates their heritage and culture. Whereas Latinos have had a profound and positive influence in our community and our country through their music, literature, food, and strong commitment to family, faith, hard work, and service to country. They have enhanced and shaped our local and national character with centuries-old traditions that reflect the multi-ethnic and multicultural customs of their community. And whereas there are more than 60,500,000 Latinos living in the United States, comprising nearly 20% of the population, and the data shows that the Latino Americans earned more than $1 trillion and paid more than $275 billion in taxes in 2019 alone. And whereas of the 12.2 million business owners in the United States, there are estimated 600,000 U.S.-born Latino business owners and roughly 1.2 million immigrant Latino business owners, making up 15% of all business ownership, supporting millions of employees nationwide and contributing to more than $700 trillion in revenue to the economy of the United States. And whereas Latinos were mobilized and killed in action for military service in World War I, World War II, the Korean War, the Vietnam War, both Iraq wars, and the Afghan War, and many conflicts around the world in the service to the United States. And whereas Latino Americans are dedicated public servants holding posts at the highest levels of government in the United States, now therefore be it resolved that the Chelsea City Council does hereby support September 15th to October 15th as 2021 as Hispanic Heritage Month, and encourages participation in this special annual tribute by learning and celebrating the generations of Latino Americans who have positively influenced and enriched our nation and society. Councilor Garcia?
I make a motion to adopt unanimously under suspension if there are no objections, and I briefly wish to speak on it.
You have the floor.
Thank you, Council President. Very briefly, thank you so much for introducing this and really honoring the Latinos in our community. As this resolution beautifully states, Latinos have contributed in many realms, from providing service to our country, providing cultural benefits to the community, economic benefits to the community. And I would also like to briefly highlight that throughout this month, there's a lot of downtown initiatives that are being run and sponsored by the city and also led by residents to really celebrate the Latino Hispanic Heritage Month. So we welcome you. I know there's an event on Saturday, September 18th. There will be a parade starting at the Welsh Funeral Home, and it will go all the way downtown to Chelsea Square. So everyone is welcome to join a little bit about the fourth floor and the Central American communities. But of course, there will be more events to attend throughout this month. So thank you, Councilor, for really highlighting the importance of National Latino Heritage Month.
Anyone else? Councilor Brown?
Thank you, Mr. President. Again, I want to commend you on this year. We do it every year. Special this year, we can actually get out and do some of the things that Councilor Garcia spoke about. But it's great to recognize the history, and not only the history, but the contributions of the Latinos' sacrifice and also the great work they've done in our nation. This month, we honor it, whether it be from South America, North America, Central America, the Caribbean, we go out and we honor. But as Councilor Garcia also stated, there's a lot of festivities going on. This is a time throughout the month of September from the 15th to August 15th that you can actually go out and celebrate down at some of our restaurants and help them bring some economy funding back to their restaurants. So this is a great time that we can go out and support it. I know I've seen a few of us out there already, but it's really important that we go out and try to really spur the excitement of this part of the year. The weather is still nice. Unfortunately, we're still dealing with COVID, so why don't we be safe and also cautious, but also be very respectful this time of month and try to help out our communities, as Councilor Avellaneda stated, about the money that we spend and the money that they generate. It's needed more this time of year. Thank you, Mr. President.
Anyone else?
Yes.
Seeing none, we'll now move on to the next item on our agenda. We have a celebratory resolution introduced by Councilor Zabit regarding Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. Whereas the beginning of sundown of September 6, 2021, the Jewish people celebrate the holy days of Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, the New Year, and the Day of Atonement, 5782. And whereas Jews have been a part of the American fabric since 1654, by 1890 there were 82 Jews in Chelsea, and by 1910 there were 11,000 Jews, or 1/3 of the total population. And by the 1930s, the Jewish community constituted almost 1/2 of the city's population. And whereas Chelsea Jews were early and active participants in political and military life, and elected to local government positions as aldermen and on the school committee, and contributed greatly to the rich social, economic, and spiritual fabric of the city that exists today. And whereas one time there were 21 fully functioning synagogues in the city of Chelsea, and a thriving community of Jews among the myriad of immigrants from all nations. And whereas today the population of Chelsea is made up of a diverse and eclectic group of immigrants from all over the world who contribute to the vitality and powerful sense of community in the city. And this year, 5782 continues to bring unique challenges across the globe and within the city due to the present health crisis of COVID-19. And whereas the Chelsea Jewish commitment is to repair the world and correct injustices directed against the Jewish community in all faiths and ethnicities, and not to tolerate racism or bigotry wherever it may be found. And whereas now therefore be it resolved that the City Council of Chelsea and the residents of Chelsea honors the Jewish New Year of 5782 and joins the Jewish community in continuing to endorse the goal of social equity on this date. Introduced by Councilor Naomi Zabit. Councilor Zabit, what is your wish?
Adopt unanimously under suspension if there are no objections. And
Seeing
may I
no
speak on it?
objections, you have the floor.
Thank you. Happy Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur to everybody out there. I'd just like to say quickly that, again, this is another very challenging year, just like last year. But things are looking up, and that it's going to be a happy and sweet and healthy New Year for all. Hag Sameach.
We'll now move on. Oh, Councilor Brown.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you. I also like to wish everyone a happy New Year. And I know, as Councilor stated, this is another time of the year that we usually get together, these big feasts and out and enjoying family and different types of foods and the apples and, you know, the good stuff. But it's still, you know, we're still dealing with the COVID. We thought it was behind us. It's in front of us. We still have to be cautious. And as we go into this last part of it where we have the atonement and you know, rescind our sins, it's a good opportunity that we can also pay homage to this resolution. So thank you again for this resolution. Thank you, Mr. President.
Seeing no other speakers, we'll move on to the next item on the agenda, the approval of the minutes. We have special I'm sorry, skipping over the section of, we'll now move on to public speaking. If there's anyone in the audience that would like to speak to the City Council on any matters, please come up to the microphone, state your name and address, and you will be given 4 minutes to address the council. Seeing no one, we'll now move on to the next portion of the meeting, which is the approval of the minutes. We have special meeting minutes of July 19th, 2021. Is there a motion to adopt the minutes?
I make a motion to adopt the minutes unanimously under suspension if there are no objections.
Councilor Garcia asks that we adopt the minutes under suspension. Seeing no objection. We'll now move on from communications from the city manager.
Communication from the city manager, request to appropriate Commonwealth Transportation Infrastructure Funds. Dear councilors, I am writing to request that the City Council appropriate $45,026 in available funds from the Commonwealth Transportation Infrastructure Fund to assist in our existing FY22 street and sidewalk program. If approved, the appropriated funds would supplement our existing DPW road improvement line item and will be spent by the city before the close of FY22. These extra funds available for appropriation come from the recent annual distribution to the city based upon rides originating in Chelsea from transportation network companies, such as Uber and Lyft. As part of the new regulatory scheme, TNCs are required to pay the Commonwealth a 20-cent per ride assessment. One half of that assessment is distributed proportionately to each city and town in the Commonwealth based upon the number of rides that originate in the municipality. For calendar year 2020, the City of Chelsea's share of this assessment based upon TNC company rides originating in Chelsea was $45,026. The Massachusetts Department of Revenue has previously determined that local communities must specifically appropriate these TNC funds in order to be spent. Further, the funds must be utilized to address the impact of transportation network services on municipal roads, bridges, and other transportation infrastructure. Accordingly, I am asking now that the $45,026 available to Chelsea be appropriated to the DPW Streets and Sidewalks Capital Road Improvement line item to be used for remaining FY22 roadway work. I've attached the order to accomplish the requested council action.
Councilor Robertson.
On the new business.
Accepted, filed under suspension.
Yep.
There will be an order attached later on under new business. We have the next communication from the city manager regarding changes to the administrative code. Dear councilors and city clerk Citron White, pursuant to section 6-1A of the Chelsea City Charter, I'm writing to notify you that I have promulgated 3 new administrative orders amending the administrative code. These changes are as follows. 1, the First Amendment codifies a new Office of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. The Second Amendment changes the name of Community Schools Advisory Board to a Community Recreation Advisory Board and reduces its membership to 7 members. The Third Amendment reduces the membership of the Youth Commission to 7 members. We've had difficulty filling the previous roles. Councilor Robinson?
Communication under suspension if there are no objections.
Seeing none, we'll move on to the next item on the agenda of C, which is communication received from city manager regarding parking ticket process.
Dear Councilors, I am writing in response to the recent council order requesting information on the process for keeping track of parking ticket payments. Parking ticket payments are handled exclusively by the Treasurer's Office. When a payment is made, the clerk scans the ticket and enters the payment into the software system. If the customer does not have the physical ticket with them, the plate number or name is keyed into the system to locate unpaid violations. The payment is tied directly to the parking ticket number, so at any time the Treasurer's Office can determine if a ticket has been paid by searching for the parking ticket number. That information is always available. The receipts on parking tickets are reconciled on a daily basis to ensure accuracy between processed tickets and funds received. When a payment is made, the customer is provided a receipt. The receipt is proof of payment. The city can always determine in its system whether a payment has been made by checking the ticket number in the system. The software will confirm whether or not payment was made for that specific ticket number. Of course, it is possible and never can occur in data processing, such as that payment made by a customer is not tied to the correct ticket number. However, in the rare circumstances where such errors occur, the customer's receipt will be the proof of payment. I trust this explanation is helpful. City Manager.
Councilor Recupero?
Possible.
You may.
A while back, I asked the city manager about this procedure, because a lot of people lose their tickets, and they don't remember where they put it, and they get charged again. It seems like that's the way it's going to be. If you lose your ticket, like it states here, if errors happen, and they can't find it, and you lose your ticket, you can't come out and show them your ticket, you're still going to have to pay again. So my advice to everybody that has this problem is a simple problem. Don't pay with cash. Pay with a check. That way you keep your receipt. No matter what it is, you put your number of your ticket and your receipt. That way, there could never be a mistake. So do not pay your tickets with cash. Because if you pay with cash and you lose your receipt and they don't happen to find it again, that means you're going to have to pay all over again. So to avoid all the problems for that, just pay with a check or pay with a credit card. That way, they can never charge you double. Otherwise, make sure you keep your receipt.
We'll move on to the next communication received from the City Manager, Tom Rosina, regarding the appointment of the Chair of the Board of Assessors. Dear Councilors, pursuant to Section 4.2 of the Charter of the City of Chelsea, I'm writing to recommend that the City Council approve Mr. Michael Flynn, 23 Thelma Road, Dorchester, as the new Chair of the Chelsea Board of Assessors. Mr. Flynn will replace the Acting Chief of Assessing, Jim Sullivan, whose term expired on June 30th, 2021. Mr. Flynn's term would run until June 30th, 2024. Although Mr. Flynn will chair the board, Mr. Sullivan will remain as Acting Chief of Assessing. As you know, the city has been seeking a new permanent Chief of Assessing for some time to replace Mary Lou Ireland. That search for her replacement continues. In the meantime, to fill the knowledge gap within the department, we've been relying on an outside expert consultant, one of whom has been Mr. Flynn. Mr. Flynn has over 30 years of experience in the assessing world, including stints as the Chief of Assessing in Framingham and Plymouth. He currently runs the Commercial Assessing Department for the City of Quincy. He's also past president of the Massachusetts Association of Assessing Officers. Recently, the city has utilized Mr. Flynn as a hired consultant for, among other tasks, a full review of the assessments for our commercial and industrial parcels. That process will likely span several years. As he pursues that task, Mr. Flynn can further help us if he becomes an official member and chair of our Board of Assessors. Mr. Flynn will bring vast knowledge of Massachusetts assessing practices to this role. Further, we are hopeful that his presence on the board may make the permanent Chief of Assessing role more attractive to outside candidates. I respectfully request your approval of Mr. Flynn's appointment and the required waiver of the residency. A copy of Mr. Flynn's resume is attached. Councilor Robinson?
Adoption, if there are no objections.
Seeing no objection, we will now vote on a roll call for the adoption of the communication and the appointment of the chair for the Board of Assessments, along with the acknowledgement of the waiver of residency.
Yes to adopt. Councilor Vido, absent. Councilor Avellaneda.
Yes.
Councilor Recupero. Councilor Garcia, absent. Councilor Vega Maldonado.
Yes.
Councilor Robinson?
Yes.
Councilor Rodriguez?
Yes.
Councilor Taylor? Yes. Councilor Lopez? Yes. Councilor Brown? Yes. And Councilor Zabit.
Yes.
9 in favor, none opposed, 2 absent.
The motion is carried.
Carries.
We now have a communication from the city manager regard to the request for approval of union contracts with firefighters Local 937.
Request for contract approval. Dear Councilors, pursuant to Section 431 of the Chelsea City Charter, I am writing to request City Council approval for the cost items of the new collective bargaining agreement negotiated with the Chelsea firefighters Local 937. This is a new 3-year contract covering the period from July 1, 2021 through June 30th, 2024. A copy of the memorandum of agreement is attached. The most significant concession from the city's perspective is the agreement by the fire union to accept for the first time a residency requirement, which was specific demand of the city council. The new residency requirement is identical to the residency provisions negotiated previously with the 2 police unions. The contract includes annual percentage raises for the members. The amounts are as follows: FY22, 2.75. FY23, 2.75, and FY24, 3% on July 1, 2023, a 0.50 on January 1, 2024. These annual raises are identical to those approved by the council for the 2 police unions. The total cost of all wages over the next 3 years is approximately $1.8 million. I respectfully ask that the City Council approve the cost items of the proposed contract. A draft order is attached.
Councilor Robinson?
And file a communication, something will be coming up on the new business.
Communication is adopted under suspension. There will be an order relative to that communication under new business. We have a next communication from the city manager regarding the notice of waiver of intent for Frank Bonet. Dear councilors, pursuant to Administrative Code Section 1-12, period 02, I am writing to notify you of my intention to hire Mr. Frank Bonet, 33 Dartmouth Street, Lawrence, Massachusetts, as Director of Human Resources, and to grant him a waiver from residency requirement set forth in the Administrative Code, Part 4, Section 1-12-01. Mr. Bonet's start date is expected to be Tuesday, September 7, 2021. A copy of Mr. Bonet's resume is attached in accordance to Section 1, period 12, period 02. I request that you provide me with any comments on the proposed waiver within 7 days. Councilor Robinson?
If there are no objections.
Seeing none. We have a next communication involving the notice of waiver intent for Julia Valasquez. Dear councilors, I'm writing to notify you of my intent to grant residency waiver to Treasury Department employee Julia Valasquez. Ms. Valasquez has been an employee for the city for almost 20 years. Ms. Valasquez is relocating from Chelsea to Lynn in accordance to the Administrative Code, Part 4, Section 1, period 12, period 02. I request that you provide me with any comments on this proposed waiver within 7 days. Councilor Robinson? Seeing none. We now have a communication from the city manager regarding the request for approval of union contract. I'm sorry. The same one. Memo, Local Firefighters 937 Memo Agreement. Dear councilors, I realize that in order to effectuate the wage provisions of the new collective bargaining agreement with the Chelsea Firefighters Local 937, the City Council needs to approve a transfer from one of our FY22 salary reserve account. Unfortunately, I neglected to include that in the order in my August 2nd, 2021 letter requesting approval of the new 3-year collective bargaining agreement. A task for your review is this specific required transfer order, which should be considered along with the vote for the approval of the cost provisions. I respectfully ask for your support. Councilor Robinson?
Accept and file a communication under suspension. Something will be coming up on the new business.
We have a communication from City Manager Tom Ambrosino regarding the request for approval on union contract with E911 Local 192. Pursuant to Section 4-31 of the Chelsea City Charter, I am writing to request the City Council approval for the cost of items of the new collective bargaining agreement negotiated with the New England Police Benevolent Association Local 192, which represents E911 dispatchers. This is a new 3-year contract covering the period from July 1, 2021 to June 30th, 2024. A copy of the full contract is attached. Contract includes new annual percentage raises. The amounts are as follows: FY22, 3%, FY23, 3.5%, FY24, 3.5%. In addition, each member will receive a signing bonus totaling $3,500, $2,500 allocated for FY20, and $1,000 allocated for FY21. The percentage increases for this union for the three-year FY22-24 period are slightly higher than those negotiated with certain other unions. The reason is that E911 dispatchers did not receive any percentage increase for either FY20 or 21. Thus, this financial package is actually covering 5 total fiscal years. The total cost of all wages increases in 5 years approximately $308,000. The one significant change to the contract language benefiting the city is a new residency provision recognizing for the first time that the city's administrative code provisions on residency shall apply to E911 employees for a period of 10 years from the date of hiring. I respectfully ask the City Council approve the cost items of proposed contract and the required transfer necessary to effectuate its provisions. Draft orders are attached. Councilor Robinson?
Accept and file a communication. There'll be something coming up on the new business.
Next communication is a communication from City Manager from Tom Ambrosino regarding requested approval for the increase in the School Department FY22 budget. Dear councilors, as you recall, the FY22 budget approved by the City Council in June included a school department budget of $107,452,859. That budget was based on the original budget numbers submitted by the governor at the start of the FY22 budget process. Not surprisingly, as in the case in most years, the state final budget approved by the legislature and signed by the governor included a significant increase in Chapter 70 funds for the Chelsea School Department over and above the amount originally recommended by the governor. The increase due to the school department's budget supported by these new state funds is $1,052,558 for a revised school budget department of $105,416. The school committee voted to approve this budget on August 11th, 2021. A memorandum of that vote is attached. Because of this increase to the school department's budget is fully funded by Chapter 70 aid, there is no impact on the municipal side of the city's budget. For this reason, I respectfully ask that the City Council approve the full $108,505,416 revised budget approved by the City School Committee on August 11, 2021. A proposed order is attached. Councilor Robinson?
Accept and file a communication under suspension. There'll be something coming up on the new business.
We have a communication received by City Manager Tom Ambrosino regarding the notice of waiver intent for Jenna Clarkson. Dear councilors, pursuant to the Administrative Code 1:12:02, I'm writing to notify you of my intention to hire Ms. Jenna Jackson, 250 Meridian Street, Apartment 510, East Boston, Massachusetts, as a crime analyst for the police department, and to grant her a waiver from residency requirements set forth in the Administrative Code, Part 4, Section 1:12:01. A copy of Ms. Clarkson's resume is attached. There were no Chelsea applicants for this position. In accordance with Section 1:12:02, I request that you provide me with any comments on the proposed waiver within 7 days. Councilor Recupero.
My motion is that I would like to see more people live in our city.
Is
Not
there
too many-
first make the motion?
Okay, my motion is to adopt under suspension, I suppose, right? Can I
Yes.
speak on it?
There's a motion to adopt on suspension. You may now speak.
Okay. Everybody don't want to live in this city. Everybody wants to leave. Nobody wants to live here. Everybody wants to get jobs here, get the money here, but they don't want to live here. Then here we have 7 days. If we get this now, we can't bring it and tell you we don't like it within 7 days because each meeting is every 2 weeks, so it's 14 days. So, even if we don't want them, we can't do nothing about it. It should be, and I'm getting tired of hearing the same thing all the time. Here's what it says. To grant her a waiver from the resident requirement set forth, there were no Chelsea applicants for this position. What do you mean to tell me? Nobody applies for these jobs? That nobody applies. There's no one at all that applies for this job. That's the part that gets me. Every job here, either there was no Chelsea qualified people, there was no Chelsea application, or one applies. What's the matter with that? What are you saying? We have 40,000 people in this city. There's no qualified people. Nobody applies, so let's advertise it more. Why does everybody have to leave our city? There's plenty of people here that need the jobs. There's plenty of people here that are qualified. I'm tired of everybody always leaving. They make more money than the average person that lives in this city. So if they make more money, their income should stay with us. Why should the poor people pick up the burden of them? So in other words, come to my city, take my money, and run away. That's not what you're supposed to do. You stay here for an extended period of time. Nobody wants you to stay here forever because you can't force someone to live there forever. But if you want to get the job here and you want to stay with us, you stay for a little time. That's all we're asking. And I don't want to hear no more. There's no more qualified people. Nobody applied. Maybe we should scrutinize even better how many people actually do apply for these jobs. Because I'm tired of it. There's plenty of Chelsea people, and there's plenty of people here that are qualified for these jobs. I want to make sure that they have the opportunity to apply and work in our city. I don't want everybody that works in our city that doesn't live in our city. You should live in our city. I can maybe understand when you want to talk about the high positions where people, you say, okay, you have in the top of the department, so if you don't let them come in, they might not want to come in, and then you might not get the most qualified people. But an average person that gets an average job should have the opportunity.
One more minute, Councilor. Okay. Seeing no, this was passed under suspension. Seeing no objection, that motion carries. We'll now move on to the next communication from the city manager regarding notice of waiver for Fred D. Filippo. Dear councilors, Administrative Code, Section 1, Period 12, Period 02, I'm writing to notify you of my intention to hire Mr. Fred D. Filippo III, 20 Alton Avenue, Haverhill, Massachusetts, for the position of E911 dispatcher and to grant him a waiver from residency requirement for a set forth in Administrative Code, Part 4, Section 1, Period 12, Period 01. Mr. D. Filippo has considerable dispatching experience. A copy of Mr. D. Filippo's resume is attached. In accordance to Section 1, Period 12, Period 02, I request that you provide me with any comments on the proposed waiver within 7 days. Councilor Robinson.
File the communication under suspension if there are no objections.
We have another communication for the city manager regarding the notice of waiver for Norielas Valentin pursuant to City Code 1-12-202. I am writing to notify you of my intention to hire Ms. Norielas Valentin, 31 Martin Street, Revere, for the exempt position of the technical project lead and to grant a waiver residency from the requirements set forth in the Administrative Code, Part 4, Section 1, Period 1201. This is a temporary 18-month position to help the city implement some major technology upgrades. There were no Chelsea applicants for this position. A copy of Ms. Valentin's resume is attached. In accordance to the section, I request you provide me with any comments, proposed waiver within 7 days. Councilor Robinson.
Accept and file a communication under suspension if there are no objections.
Seeing none. We now have communication received. Oh, Councilor Lopez.
Comment here. In this position, they always said it's a temporary position, but then we end up having a full-time job, like happened from few other positions. It always said it's a temporary. We get grants, and then what happened? The city got to get this full-time people. Also, I want to make a comment with the past order regarding 911. I think I mentioned something on the email the city manager sent about the 911 dispatcher. Like Councilor Cooper said, there's about 40,000 something people in Chelsea. To say there's no qualified people for these 911 jobs, he mentioned he may going to have a free training for people in Chelsea. I think it's a great idea to do that. There's plenty of people in Chelsea. If we do that, we're going to have people who want to work. And there's people who want to work in Chelsea, but we don't give them that opportunity. We don't give them training. So I think it's a great idea. Thank you.
The next communication is a communication received from City Manager Tom Ambrosino regarding the appointments to boards and commissions. Dear councilors, pursuant to Section 4, Period 2 of the Charter of the City of Chelsea, I'm writing to recommend the following individuals to the boards and commissions in the city. For reappointment to the Council on Elder Affairs, Ms. Jean Chaplin, 15 Gardner Street. For appointment to the Council of Elder Affairs, Mr. Robert Mullally, I think so, Mullally, 24 Eleanor Street, 109, to replace Mr. Antonio Ortega, who has resigned. For reappointment to the Cultural Council, Ms. Carolina Anzola, 220 Spencer Ave. For appointment to the Historical Commission, Mr. Cody J. Collins Hernandez, 121 Bloomingdale Street. For reappointment to the Historical Commission, Mr. Joshua Resnick, 229 Ocean Street, Lynn, for a new 3-year term. For reappointment to the Chelsea Housing Authority, Mr. Bert Taverna, 148 Grove Street, for a new 5-year term. For appointment to the Planning Board, Ms. Sarah Rich, 15 Orange Street, for a 3-year term. For reappointment to the Planning Board, Ms. Jessica Arbaiza, 69 Orange Street, new term to end September 23rd. For reappointment to the Planning Board, Ms. Mimi Rakator, 44 Beacon Street, to end November 4th, 2024. For reappointment as a tree warden, Mr. Fidel Maltez, 13 Admiral Way. For reappointment to, as an alternative member on the Zoning Board, Ms. Joan Cromwell, 38 Addison Street. For reappointment to the Community Preservation Act Committee, Ms. Caroline Bird, 107 Shretler Street. For reappointment to the Community Preservation Act Committee as a statutory member from the Recreation Department, Ms. Bia Cravata, Director of Recreation and Cultural Affairs. For reappointment to the Licensing Board, for appointment to the Licensing Board, Ms. Marnie Marion McAlpine, 20 Franklin Ave. For reappointment to the Human Rights Commission, Ms. C. Nicole Barrett, 325 Commandant's Way. For reappointment to the Human Rights Commission, Olivia Ann Walsh, 91 Crest Ave. For reappointment to the Chelsea Disability Commission, Ms. Susan Backstrom, 260 Clark Ave.
Is he leaving? Is that what it is? He's resigning?
Mr. Mark Rossi was not, I'm sorry, to replace Mark Rossi.
Right,
Right,
yeah.
okay. I didn't miss his name, I was just that he wasn't being reappointed. I didn't mention the replacement, but yes, his name was
Right,
there
he's
as
resigning.
correct. We need a motion for a second reading. Do I have one? So, Councilor Robinson asked that this be waived, moved to a second reading. We need 2 readings for all members. We have the next section of our agenda. We have communications and petitions to the City Council. We have a communication received by City Council regarding a special, from City Council President Roy Avellaneda regarding the special subcommittee for City Manager Evaluation Committee and appointing City Council members. Dear councilors, please be advised that the following City Council has been appointed to serve on the special subcommittee for the City Manager Evaluation. City Councilor Roy Avellaneda, City Councilor Todd Taylor, City Councilor Melinda Vega Maldonado, City Councilor Giovanna Recupero, City Councilor Yamir Rodriguez. Do I have a motion to adopt? Councilor Robinson asked that we adopt under suspension the communication. We have the next communication from City Council President regarding the appointment of Councilor Taylor and Councilor Zabit to the ARPA Community Advisory Committee. Dear councilors, please be advised that for the following city councilors have been appointed to serve on the new ARPA Community Advisory Committee. This committee will create a roadmap for using ARPA funds to support potential priority areas such as affordable housing, workforce development, the environment, open space, food security, and mental and behavioral health within the city. Councilor Todd Taylor and Councilor Naomi Zabit. Respectfully, City Council Roy Avellaneda.
Accept and file a communication under suspension if there are no objections.
We have the next communication received from the parking clerk Jeanette Citron White regarding traffic and parking commissions from the September 7th meeting. Do we have, attached with this is the areas maps with this. So do we have a motion from the council?
Accept and file communication if there are no objections.
On a roll call.
On a roll call basis.
So we'll have a roll call on the adoption of the vote taken by the traffic board And let me go over, so real quick. There was to post a handicap sign at 46 Orange Street. Number 7, to implement the improvement of a bus stop park in Hawthorne, which would raise the crosswalk in that area. Item 8 was to eliminate one parking space along 2nd Street in Chelsea Square, do the refurbishment. Item 9 was to post a handicap sign at 75 Congress Ave. Item 10 was to post a handicap sign at 142 Chestnut Street. Item 11, to post a handicap sign at 8 Reynolds. Item 12 was to remove the no parking during school hours in front of St. Rose School. Item 13 was to post a handicap sign at 824 Broadway. Item 14 was to modify the signal and intersection markings at Spruce and Everett Avenue, installing a dedicated left turn at Spruce Street. Item 15 was to post a handicap sign at 139 Bloomingdale Street. Item 16, regard is to parking relief on high holidays during the synagogue on September 6th to 16th. Item 17 to 7 was to institute pedestrian safety measures, a shared bike lane on Hawthorne Street adjacent to the Early Center based on this request by Ben Cares. Item 18, to remove the handicap sign at 265 Maple Street. The rest are to remove handicap signs at 46 Orange Street, 26 Blossom, 5 John Street, 57 Addison, 38 Hancock, 131 Walnut, 160 Spencer Ave, 143 Orange Street, 74 Garland Street, 7 Clinton, and 73 Maverick, as they were no longer in use. Question from Councilor Brown.
How you would go about removing or request to remove a handicap sign, because a lot of folks are not sure that if you pass away and you have that, you have to have a doctor's notice or notice of death. What's the procedure to remove it that the public will be informed?
In order to have a handicap sign removed in any particular spot in the city of Chelsea, a resident can either, who was part of the family who had originally requested, or it could be done by neighbors who recognize that potentially the person that was using it no longer lives there or passed away. A simple communication to the traffic clerk will begin the process, at which time the information will be verified by the parking commission.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions on the packet before we do a roll call vote? Seeing none, the clerk will now call a roll to adopt the measures of the traffic board as presented on September 7th.
Councilor Vido absent. Councilor Avellaneda?
Yes.
Councilor Recupero? Councilor Garcia?
Yes.
Councilor Vega Maldonado?
Yes.
Councilor Robinson?
Yes.
Councilor Rodriguez?
Yes.
Councilor Taylor?
Yes.
Councilor Lopez? Councilor Brown?
Yes.
And Councilor Zabit.
Yes.
10 in favor, none opposed, 1 absent, and it carries.
The motion carries. We have the next communication from Matt Frank of 45 Jones Ave.
Submit your comment. Hello and good evening. I am writing today to ask the benevolent City Council of Chelsea to reconsider the rule of how the public can communicate with you during a City Council meeting. It would appear that the public must submit their comments on the Wednesday before a meeting. Agendas seem to be posted on that same day during the workday. This arrangement requires residents to not only be fully on top of the day-to-day actions of City Hall, but that they find the agenda, figure out what it might mean, and then formulate a response to it. In addition to this, older residents and those who might not be computer savvy would need to find some method to insert this form. It also leaves minimal time for a resident to look into an issue before submitting the form. I am not sure why the council would take this position, as you don't have the power to submit and file communications if you so wish, and if someone submits information late, it can be put aside anyway. I would have had more time to formulate my argument, but this moments before the 4 p.m. deadline for this Monday's meeting, as it is 3:59 p.m. on Wednesday, as I hit submit, hoping the computer does not freeze. The box is also quite difficult and worky to type into. making the formation of coherent sentences and concepts difficult. I do hope you consider looking into a way to ensure efficiency and safety while also ensuring residents have the ability to participate in democracy at their most local level as we grapple with the continuing global pandemic and all the issues related to it. Thank you for that, all that you do and provide for our community. Respectfully, Matthew Frank.
Is there a motion on the communication?
I make a motion to accept and file communication under suspension if there are no objections, and I wish to briefly speak on it.
Seeing none. Is there any objection for me to speak on this from the chair? I appreciate our former colleague, Matt Frank, on bringing this, and just to clarify, there is a process that was put in place for communications that that has to be posted on the agenda. That is a deadline of Wednesday. In order for us to accept the communication and it be part of the agenda, that is the Wednesday deadline. That does not stop any communication from being sent to us after that date and brought in as a late communication and can still be read at a meeting potentially. Also, obviously, besides sending a regular email or a hard copy via mail, any member of the public can still attend our meeting and speak at our meetings during the public speaking portion. So just a clarification, that is not the only method, but we do appreciate the comments brought to our former colleague. Thank you.
New business.
On the new business.
First item under new business, item introduced by Councilor Melinda Vega Maldonado. Request that the Traffic and Parking Commission look into changing Clark Avenue from a two-way to a one-way from Webster Ave to Eleanor Street.
Councilor Vega Maldonado.
Accept and file under suspension, if I can speak on it.
Seeing no objection, that motion carries under suspension. Next order.
You want to speak?
I know.
I'm sorry, Councilor Maldonado.
Um,
I didn't hear that portion. I apologize.
I just wanted to mention that this is actually something that many of my constituents have brought to my attention, actually, when I was door knocking, as like a serious concern of theirs. And increasingly, as there's constant traffic that happens, and just this year, we were able to track about 3 different accidents that happened because the cars just collide. And, you know, they don't want to stop, or one doesn't want to nudge. It's actually happened to my mom, unfortunately. My neighbor, my front neighbor. I've also, as a mother, fear this has happened to me, where my youngest son, who you guys met, who has autism, he's a wanderer. So he has literally ran across the street, and I fear that, you know, anything happening to him, because cars go extremely, extremely fast. And I mean, it's extremely scary. And so I urge community members that want that changed. I know that there's a petition going around, so I urge them to sign the petition, and also to come to the Traffic and Parking Commission meeting on October 5th to share their concerns. Okay. Thank you.
Next order introduced by Councilor Brown. Request that the city manager identify potential parcels in Chelsea for use by the Affordable Housing Trust Fund Board for affordable home ownership, including parcels and tax titles that are bank-owned.
It's okay, I'd like to speak briefly.
You may.
Thank you, Mr. President. We've actually had some conversation this past summer regarding trying to come up with ways how we can get and find ways to get affordable housing. As we prepare to have this post at some time exit from this pandemic, it's time for us to really start to be looking into some really serious, doable ways of finding parcels and maybe some bank properties, just having some foreclosures that the city can actually go after and contact with, that we can actually use for stable home ownership, that we can use with our home trust fund. So I thought, because we've had some conversation, and some of the conversation that we've had has run into some roadblocks, I thought that we should start looking for parcels that potentially that we have pretty much a lot of control over, or land use, or also some properties that we can deal with that banks are having some kind of problems with, are willing to offer them up to the city, and we can use them for some home opportunities. So again, it's an early discussion. I'm hoping that this here order will go to the city manager. He will give me this body some kind of feedback. We'll have some sense of hearings, and we can find something. Maybe he can say, hey, we have 20 parcels, and this is what it will cost if we go after them. And it's not, direct personal property, but it's parcels that we can really get into and really get, as the president is trying to do, some home ownership where we can have some stable home ownership. And as we go from this pandemic, when folks start to have a place to live, it takes that stress off of them. Prior to the pandemic, houses were high. During the pandemic, prices of affordability, whether it was rent or buying a home, went sky high. So it's a stressful situation right now. Everyone is unsure that if they're going to be evicted, they're going to have to foreclose. And if we find properties or if we find parcels, we can be first at the table to make something happen with our affordable home program here in Chelsea. Thank you.
Any comments?
Next order, introduce.
Does anyone object for me speaking from the chair? No. Thank you. Because this is an item that I've talked about many times, and I appreciate Council Brown in bringing this up, I just want to put this to my colleagues. First of all, this council has already gone ahead and voted a home rule petition for allowing the city to take properties that are in tax title, to go immediately, not to put them to auction, but to, Councilor Brown, go ahead. You want to?
Yeah, I'm not trying to take anyone's property.
No,
I'm
but
trying to have the city manager look at potential
Okay.
property parcels with no properties on it that we can build on.
so right now, the home rule petition that this council passed was that any properties that are in default in tax title and fall into receivership from the city or can go after through tax liens immediately goes to the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. And there is probably, in my discussions with the city manager, about 3 or 4 properties that are in the pipeline already that will be coming to the city. The problem with that, the realistic problem with that is that the Affordable Housing Trust Fund, for as good as it does, is limited as to how fast it can actually take a land and then build homes. So this process, as frustrating as it is for someone who's trying to push home ownership opportunities such as myself and my colleagues, you're looking at maybe in the next 3-4 years at best, maybe 4, 5, maybe 6 homes that will come on the market. If we take a look at an example of Orange Street, that already was something that we voted on, is going through its RFP process, takes a year, and then before it even goes to and responds to an RFP, and then finally gets built, you're talking about 4 years before those 4 homes come on the market and we provide home ownership opportunities. So I have to ask my colleagues, are we simply going to accept that that's the pace and that's our answer to the home ownership crisis that is facing this community? That the best thing that we can do is maybe 4 homes at a time in 4 years? Or are we going to do more? And if we're going to do more, I ask my colleagues, I am not alone in this. Be creative. Go ahead, come to me. Tell me what else we can do, because just thinking that we're going to hand possible properties to the Affordable Housing Trust Fund, I just laid out the timeline. 4 years, 4 homes. Meanwhile, we are, one, losing people to other communities, being forced, and two, forcing our residents to have no choice but to pay rent. Because if you're forcing them to have to live here as a residency requirement, and there's no home ownership opportunities, you are literally forcing them to rent. You give them no option to buy, because there is no option to buy. Someone who's a 911 operator for 10 years with a set residency requirement has no choice but to rent for 10 years, because at best, the housing policies of this city is we bring 4 homes at a time for home ownership opportunities. So yeah, think outside the box, get creative. I welcome ideas, but I'm not satisfied with just thinking we leave it to the Affordable Housing Trust Fund, because quite frankly, in my eyes, and I think many will agree out there who are looking, that's just not enough. So that's my comment on this. If anyone else, thank you.
Okay, next order, introduced by Councilor Brown, request that the city manager instruct DPW to look into the water flooding at the corner of 6th and Arlington Street, especially during rainstorms.
Accept and file this communication under suspension, please.
That order, if there are no objections.
Councilor Robinson asked that an amendment, a friendly amendment, be done to amend the order to include
Everett Avenue
Ave.
by the high school, and also Vale Street.
So Everett Ave at Carter Street and Vale at Carter Street.
Yeah.
Everett Ave, Vale, Carter. Yeah. Mr. President.
Councilor Brown.
Thank you, Councilor Robinson. We'll add that to it, and actually, you know, this is a request because during these rainstorms and during this trying time we had, it just may be that our sewer system is plugged up or clogged up, but we just want to make sure, because the folks over here on 6th Street in Arlington are having some major problems, and I know, I know that they're actually doing work over there on housing. The Union Park is being refurbished and remodeled over there, so it shouldn't be a problem, but I know some digging is going on, so I just want to make sure that we don't keep overseeing these things that we're having problems with now. Thank you, Mr. President.
We have a next order.
Next order, introduced by Councilor Brown, request that city manager instruct DPW to put up a slow down children playing sign at the corner of William Street and Cherry Street.
Please.
Seeing no objection, would you like to talk on it? No. We'll move on to the next order.
Next order, request introduced by Councilor Recupero, request that the city manager update the city council on how many times the city uses a baiting contract. If it is not contracted, then how many times does the DPW bait the sewer a month? Provide info on most concentrated area of the city.
Councilor Recupero.
Suspension, if there's no objection, I'd like to talk about it.
You have the floor, Councilor.
First thing I would like to say, everybody in the city can go downstairs and get one of these. This was done many years ago. If you have problems in your yard and you're the owner of a house, this city, one of the few cities, I think it's the only city that gives you money to bait it. They come and they bait it for free. You don't have to pay, because this is the form you get. You get it in ISD downstairs. There you don't have to provide anything. The only thing you have to provide is information that you're the owner of the house and you like to have it baited. So here's the first one. So this is what it looks like. Go down and get it if you have a problem. The next thing is, right now, there is a big rodent, let's put it in a good way, a rodent problem in our city, large problem. But that's what every city in the surrounding areas, everybody has a rodent problem. So how are we combating it? One, I think this is a good form. The next is, I think DPW is the one that goes down and baits the sewers. So I would like to have a report. How many times do they actually bait these sewers? And where is the most places of our city which have the most rodent population? Because they could tell the infestation of rodents on sections of our city. So if certain parts of our city are more concentrated with these rodents all over the place, so maybe we should find a way to put more resources towards that area. So actually, none of us know. There's nobody in this council that actually knows how many times they bait the rats. I don't know. But I want to make sure that everybody understands that this council, as a whole council, is working very hard to try to fix the problem with the rodents. You can't eliminate it, all of you, because they've been around for millions of years, but you can't control it. So what I really want to know is, how many times do they bait it? How many rodents do we actually have? And how do we go about trying to fix it? That's the whole thing I'm asking for. And I hope that maybe the next meeting, or when they have a chance, we can have some type of answer to make us all understand how this problem is and how bad it truly is. Thank you.
Anyone else wish to speak? Councilor Brown.
Thank you, Mrs. Vice President. I'm sorry. Mrs. Vice President, thank you. Again, Councilor, thank you for bringing us here. This is a problem. It's been a problem. Every time we have construction going on in our city, it gets worse and worse. But Councilor Recupero does bring some valid questions and some valid statements regarding we need to not only work with the city and ISD, but we also need the residents. I've been in a lot of contact with residents just telling me about rodents, and I've returned phone calls, and they just don't follow up. And we just need you to do some of the things that will really get the ball rolling, and also get help in your community if you have this issue with rodents, that you can go down to the ISD department, you can fill out these forms, and you can actually talk to someone and see what you can do and what's available for you. As Councilor Recupero stated, not every city offers these programs. We have these programs because we're working hard for you, but we also need you to step forward and come in, talk to your city councilor. If you can't get in touch with your district councilor, call your at-large councilors and let us know, and we'll try to help you out as much as possible. But there is some help, and there's some valid resources available. Thank you, Madam President.
Anyone else wish to speak on it? Okay, we move on to the next item.
Next order under new business, introduced by Councilor Daniel Lopez, request that the traffic and parking look into the placement of speed tables to be located at 73 Marble Street and 150 Marble Street.
Councilor, what is your motion?
Yes, I would like to adopt it under suspension, if there's no objection, and also send it to the Traffic and Parking Commission.
Would you wish to speak on it?
Yes, please.
You have the floor, Councilor.
Yes, I've been getting calls from many residents in my district. They have expressed their concerns about car speeding on Marble Street, Library Street, Grove Street. As Marble Street was just done not too long ago, people are complaining that there's too many cars driving too fast. So I would like to see if we can do something to help our residents. Their concern is that the children, as you remember, I think you guys remember, there was a child who was hit on I think it's 56 Marble Street. There was another one on Grove Street. We have had some accidents, so we should try to avoid all this. Maybe by putting the speed tables, maybe it's not gonna stop all these accidents, but maybe help so the people don't drive too fast. Thank you.
Okay.
Any other councilor wish to speak on the matter? We move on to the next item in our agenda.
Next order under new business, order introduced by Councilor Lopez and Councilor Recupero. Request that the city manager look into instructing all department heads to notify the city council when they will be out of office, who will be their replacement in the meantime, and best form of communication to contact that person in case of an emergency in their absence.
What is the wish of the council?
Also, and I would like to speak on it, please.
Councilor Lopez moves on to adopt unanimously under suspension. You have the floor, Councilor.
Yes, I've been noticing that it's not too many head departments, when they go on vacation, they notify us. There's couple people who do it. But sometimes when there's a question that arises and we want to answer it, we either email or text, and they say, oh, I'm on vacation. So if we don't know who to talk to, who should we contact them? But I want to, at least they provide the next contact when someone is on vacation, especially head departments.
Anyone else wish to speak on it? Councilor Recupero, you have the floor.
I agree with what my fellow councilor says. I think we all should have some type of contact list when these department heads leave. When they leave, we should know. They should notify us for one, and who do we get a hold of? I've been here many years, and I've never received any type of communication telling me when they leave and who do we contact. That's probably up to us to understand who it is and who's not. But maybe it's time that they should contact us and let us know exactly how we do it and who we contact. That's all this is to inform us in case there's something that we need to get a hold of with them. Well, we can contact the city manager with everything, but do we have to go to him all the time? Why? City manager, do we have to contact you every time?
Councilor, through the chair.
Okay, so can you ask the city manager if that's the only way is to contact him every time? Or is that okay if their department heads let us know when they're not there?
Councilor, thank you. Mr. Tom Ambrosino, through the chair. The question, you can contact him anytime, and that goes for everyone.
Thank you.
So, great, so we move, does anyone else wish to speak on the matter? Any comments?
No.
We move on to the next item in our agenda.
Next item, order introduced by Council Robinson, request that the city manager update the city council on the legal housing clinic's number of court cases and how many tenant and landlord agreements that were made.
What is the wish of the councilor?
Adopt this unanimously under suspension.
Do you wish to speak on it?
Just briefly, I know that the program has an RFP out, and whether or not we're going to continue providing these services to our community, so I'm interested to find out where we are in regards to the legal clinic.
Anyone else wish to speak on the matter? We move on to our next item.
Next item, order introduced by Council Robinson, request that the city manager update the city council on the Chamber Foundation's programs that they are providing and what is the cost to the city where they are located.
Councilor, what is your motion?
Adopt this unanimously under suspension. And actually, my question goes to the fact that we provided the Chamber Foundation with some finances to provide some programs. And I know that they're no longer located at the Chelsea Chamber. So I'm trying to find out where they are located and what services that they are providing.
Motion has been taken, so now we move on to the next item. Anyone else wish to speak before we move on? No? We move on to
Next
the
order
next item.
of business introduced by Council Robinson, order that the Chelsea City Council authorize the appropriation of $45,026 as a transfer from Special Revenue TNC Surcharge Distribution Fund 5019 from funds distributed to Chelsea from the Commonwealth Transportation Infrastructure Fund in order to supplement the fiscal year 2022 DPW Streets and Sidewalks Capital Road Improvements line item. Account number 0142258-5831000 to be used for the purpose of roadway repair.
What is the wish of the council?
If there were no objections.
Councilor Robinson moves to a second reading.
Next order introduced by Council Roberts, order that pursuant to Section 4-31 of the Chelsea City Charter, Chelsea City Council approved the cost items set forth in a collective bargaining agreement negotiated with the Chelsea Firefighters Local 937, memorialized in a memorandum of agreement for the period July 1, 2021 through June 30th, 2024, dated July 21, 2021.
What is the wish of the council?
Reading adopted unanimously under suspension, move to a second reading.
Councilor Robinson
There are no
moves to adopt.
objections.
Unanimously under suspension, move to a second reading. We move on to the next item.
Next order introduced by Council Robbins, order that to fund the collective bargaining agreement negotiated with the Chelsea Firefighters Local 937, memorialized in a memorandum of agreement for the period July 1, 2021 through June 30th, 2024, dated July 21, 2021, the City Council authorizes the transfer of $289,000 from the FY22 salary reserve account to the FY22 Fire Department salaries account.
What is the wish of the council?
Need to move this to a second reading under suspension if there are no objections.
We move this to a second reading under suspension. If there are no objections, we have the next item on our agenda.
Next order introduced by Councilor Roberts, in order that pursuant to Section 4-31 of the Chelsea City Charter, Chelsea City Council approve the cost items set forth in the collective bargaining agreement negotiated with the New England Police Benevolent Association, Local 192, representing E911 dispatcher for the period July 1, 2021 through June 30th, 2024, dated August 3rd, 2021.
What is the wish of the council?
Move to a second reading under suspension if there are no objections.
We move to a second reading under suspension with no objections. Our next item on the agenda.
Next order introduced by Councilor Roberts, in order that to fund collective bargaining agreement negotiated with the New England Police Benevolent Association, Local 192, representing E911 dispatcher for the period July 1, 2021 through June 30th, 2024, dated August 3rd, 2021, the City Council authorizes the transfer of $90,000 from FY22 salary reserve account to the FY22 Emergency Management Department salaries account.
What is the wish of the council?
Move to a second reading under suspension if there are no objections.
Councilor Robertson moves to a second reading under suspension if there are no objections. Next item on our agenda.
Last order introduced by Councilor Roberts, in order that the City Council approve an increase in the fiscal year 2022 school department original appropriation from $107,452,859 to $108,505,416 for a net increase of $1,052,558 attributed to an increase in fiscal year 2022 Chapter 78.
Do I have a motion?
Move to a second reading under suspension if there are no objections.
We move, Councilor Robinson moves to a second reading under suspension if there are no objections. We have a final item under new business, and this is the zoning ordinance amendment introduced by Councilor Avellaneda regarding the adoption of community impact agreements.
Whereas the City Council recognizes that large planned or special permit development projects can have both positive and negative impacts in the community, and whereas in order to balance out these impacts, the City Council works with developers to address the social impacts through advocating for the provisions of community and public benefits. And whereas the City Council also works with developers to address environmental impacts by providing physical enhancements mitigation. And whereas the City Council considers both the impacts and needs of the immediate area as well as throughout Chelsea. Whereas the City Council, as Chelsea's duly elected legislative body, is responsible in both identifying the impacts and determining the appropriate mitigation. And whereas the City Council empowers the city manager as its designee to meet and negotiate with developers on its behalf to discuss such mitigation efforts. Whereas the City Council orders that the determination efforts be fair and reasonable, that mitigation for environmental impacts of a proposed project be comprehensive, and that mitigation for social impacts be appropriate and not excessive. And whereas at the discretion of the City Council, the developer may offer a financial contribution to be held in escrow by the city to support Chelsea's social programs and community initiatives, which would then require City Council approval for distribution. And whereas no amount of mitigation shall allow for the approval of the zoning board for approval of an otherwise unacceptable project. Now therefore, let it be resolved that the City Council, in order to best mitigate those impacts and implement and fair and transparent process, order the following zoning amendments to be adopted.
What is the motion?
Motion to second reading, and if I may also ask that it be sent to the planning board for a recommendation and for the City Council to set up a public hearing. And if I may speak on this.
So, Councilor Avellaneda, you have the floor.
Thank you. To my colleagues and to those in the audience, both here and at home, this ordinance amendment is an introduction to codify community mitigation in our ordinances. mitigation on development, whether it be a special permit of large size or a planned development. For example, something to the size of, say, Forbes. The Forbes project would have, would fall under this category. As a matter of fact, Forbes actually did offer some sort of mitigation as part of the permitting. We have mitigation or host agreements for, say, example, even the marijuana. It calls for some sort of mitigation in there and host agreements to be in place. We've had mitigation offered by other developments in different ways. But throughout, for example, Eastern Salt has mentioned in the past that as part of the expansion on the waterfront from what was going to be the replacement of 2 fuel salts, they mitigated and paid for a soccer field, a new field, AstroTurf, and to create Port Park. That was mitigation. But the process of how that all happened is nowhere to be on our books. It is technically right now negotiated with the city manager through an MOU, and the mitigation package itself is never brought in front of the city council, never given a approval, and is not transparent in the sake of something that the public gets to see prior to any sort of vote. What I am attempting to do here is to actually make that process transparent, both for the residents to see, and also give us a real process in place. The process that I put in front of us mimics what the City of Boston does. City of Boston right now has in its ordinance this very same process. However, the difference is that on each, when a project hits that designation, that of a planned project or the size limit, what they do is they designate a committee for each neighborhood locally. If the project is in Hyde Park or West Roxbury, a committee from West Roxbury is brought in. What I suggest here, rather, because we're just Chelsea, and we already have a little bit of difficulty finding people to be on a project and per se, I say, look, we are the elected officials. We at times are already voicing our concerns about certain projects in our community. We go to the zoning board, we, behind doors, outside of public view, meet with the city manager. I think we serve best as just being the body for our voice, to just have the city manager or his designee negotiate said mitigation package, bring it in front of the council for an up-down vote, very similar to what we do with other agreements, and then it goes to the zoning board. Now, there are other methods. The city manager talked about what Medford does. Medford does a planned project. By the size of the project itself, comes out with some sort of rate, like a tax rate, per square foot. The Medford uses that to spend money on open space. My only problem with that is, and again, this is my opinion, we have a difference of which one is a better way to do, and we'll discuss this, is that when you do the rate, no 2 projects are alike. I can tell you as some experience in development, no 2 blocks are the same, no 2 neighborhoods the same, and to say that the tax rate should be the same on this one and the mitigation is equal, doesn't make sense. Also, there's a limitation. Once you designate what the mitigation can be spent for, it can't be done for other things. I'd like to keep the mitigation open so that maybe sometime it's for a park, maybe it's for traffic, maybe it's more affordable housing, whatever it may be per case. And also, doesn't handicap neither this council, neither this city manager, or any future city council or city manager from deciding what is the best mitigation at that time for that particular project. I look forward to having this discussion with in our subcommittee, with our city manager and staff, with my fellow colleagues, with our residents. I look forward to hearing from our planning board on its recommendations. But I think we really need to just codify, make this idea of community mitigation and the impacts of these projects in our books for all to see. And again, I look forward to the debate. Thank you.
Anyone else wish to speak on it?
I moved it to conference and also to a recommendation to the planning board.
Adopt unanimously under suspension?
Well,
Adopt unanimously under suspension? Under suspension. Anyone else wish to speak on the matter? Seeing none, we move now to announcements. Any counselor here wish to make any announcements? Counselor Robinson?
Just briefly, actually, yesterday, a Rotary Club and a Somerville Yacht Club held a trip out in the harbor for all veterans. And actually, Chelsea veterans and people from the Soldiers' Home participated, and it was a very pleasant day. They served a continental breakfast, and then when you came back in the afternoon, they served hot dogs and hamburgers and all the fixings to go with it. And it was a good day for veterans to get out on the ocean.
Anyone else have any other announcements? Counselor Brown, you have the floor.
Just want to say also that tonight we celebrate the Taste of Chelsea. It wasn't in person. Again, this is the second year where we had to have it virtual. But the Taste of Chelsea is still looking for in-kind donation, financial donation. As you know, we were hit pretty hard here. We have a lot of families, a lot of folks that's still in need. So you can go online and you can make a donation directly to a lot of it go to domestic violence, a lot of it go to women in need, so it's a worthy cause. So if you get a chance, please try to find it. Please try to make a donation. Thank you.
Any other announcements? Counselor Taylor.
I just wanted to follow up on Counselor Robinson's comments about the Veterans Cruise. Yesterday, I also attended, and I wanted to thank Kenny Weber and his wife, Kathy. Kenny runs this every year and has for the last 10 years, and it's a good way. I was happy as a part of Chelsea Rotary to support this project every year, and it's important that we honor our veterans who a lot of times come back and don't have the honor that they deserve. So I was happy to take part in that, and thanks, Ken, for all that you do for our veterans.
Any other announcement? Counselor Lopez.
I just want to say that on Wednesday, September 15th, is Independence Day for Guatemala, El Salvador, Honduras, Nicaragua, and Costa Rica. So I want to congratulate all Central American countries, and we're going to have a celebration on Saturday at 11 a.m., a parade celebrating the Independence Day for Central America. Thank you.
Any other announcements? Councilor Brown.
Yeah, I just publicly want to thank our city manager, Tom Ambrosino. Many times this summer I've been in his office, and he's been dealing with these budgets, not the budgets, but the contract of the fire. And I know it's a lot of work. I know a lot of time has been spent into it. It goes unnoticed. But I just want to let you know that we appreciate from all those numbers. I read some of that stuff. And I know we'll be voting on it at our next meeting, which is next Monday and not the following Monday. So, thank you for making it very clear. It's very doable, the money for the contracts. And thank you a lot, Tom. Appreciate it.
Councilor Sabin.
About Yom Kippur, which begins this Wednesday. It's Erev Yom Kippur, and at the Walnut Street Synagogue on Walnut Street here in Chelsea, we will be having services. They begin at 6:30 on Wednesday, and on Thursday morning, 9:30. If you want any more information, you can look up Walnut Street Synagogue online for the schedule.
Thank you. Last call on announcements. We move on to moments of silence. Anyone have moments of silence? Councilor Robinson.
Actually, for Sergeant Rosario, who was one of the 13 members who were killed in Iraq just recently, and also for local resident Louis DiPrizio, longtime baseball coach here in the city of Chelsea, and very active in local youth sports.
Anyone else for moments of silence? I have Councilor Brown.
My good friend Judy Louie, her dad passed away. Thoughts and prayers are with you.
Councilor Taylor.
Also like to have a moment of silence for Mr. Jay Voke, who passed away recently. He was a great guy. It was always great to me, and he was a laugh. And he will be greatly missed.
Any other moments of silence? Everyone, please stand for a moment of silence. That concludes our meeting.